How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the channel. I am doing my best to try to keep up with all of the latest and greatest channel comments and things like that. So I'm going to be tackling a couple more of J.K. Rowell's questions. These came in a little while ago, so I figured it would be probably pretty easy to knock them out, considering I know exactly what I saw on the CCIE lab. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into, we're going to take it from the top down. And I'm going to continue to try to do one or two questions in addition to the Tech Support Thursday. So it'll be a continuous thing. So if any of you guys have questions around anything, feel free to drop a comment. I am actually thinking about starting a Discord server for the channel. And hopefully... I don't know, I'm still kicking around the idea. But let me know in the comments if you think that would be a good idea. So, what was the toughest section in your CCIE EI exam all three times, and toughest section in the exam you passed in? So I took routing and switching, so EI didn't exist. So EI has only been around for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And before that, it was routing and switching. Enterprise infrastructure is routing and switching with SD-WAN, SDA, and some automation added to it. So my personal opinion, so what was I'll get to your other question you have down here in just a second. What was the toughest section? So my first attempt, I completely bombed. I got stuck in troubleshooting. Because I had never seen the exam before, so I really didn't know what I was walking into or how to troubleshoot the tickets. So that's why I always tell people, if you're going to take the lab exam, always bank on 2 attempts. The first one is more of a recon, see what the questions are, see what the topology is like, how they've configured things, try to pick apart what they've got going on, and use that as your recon attempt to go and build it out at home to the best of your abilities, and with the intention that you're going to use the next month, because you have to wait 30 days between lab attempts. At least you did. I don't know if that's still a requirement, but anyway, you wait your required time. At least it was 30 days back when I took it. You wait your period of time, but in that time period, you are basically trying to hack your way through a passing attempt. So that was my strategy for going into it. So troubleshooting and diagnostics and configuration were difficult, all 3 sections. I only passed diagnostics my first time. A lot of time in operations and reading emails and tickets and things like that, so I had a lot of experience receiving information like that and having to troubleshoot through the problems. Email back and forth, trying to narrow down the problem, things like that. Second attempt, I passed all 3 sections, but I failed the overall. Because, again, I had taken what I had learned from the first attempt and mapped it to the second attempt, and I did really well. I got a lot of stuff working. I don't remember the specifics, it's been so long, but it's been 8.5 years since I've taken it, so I don't remember exactly what I saw, but so that's one of those things where you just have to kind of take it as it comes. So the third attempt was identical to my second attempt. In my second attempt, I couldn't get this particular thing working, and I couldn't understand why. It frustrated me that I couldn't figure it out. My third attempt, I ran to it was the exact same delivery. Literally the exact same delivery. Was it July? So April, June, and then October. So from June to October, so that's 6 to 10. So it was a 4-month window between my second and third attempt. 3.5 months, maybe, because it was June 28th to October 19th. That was the date that I passed, was October 19th, right? Yeah, to double check. pretty sure it was October 19th. Yeah, October 19th, 2015 is when I passed. So, yeah, it was almost 3.5 months between my second and third attempts. And when I got to the third attempt, it was a exact same delivery as my second attempt. I remembered that, and I was like, oh, okay, this will be easy. So I ran through it. But up to that point in time, I'd also spent a lot of time practicing. So I had left the learning stage of learning the technologies. That process was already complete for me, up for what I needed to do in order to pass. And that's kind of a transition point. There's the learning phase of your CCIE journey, learning all the technologies, how to implement them, how to verify them, how to troubleshoot them, breaking them, all that type of stuff. That process, however long that takes you. And then you have your pivot from learning the technologies into going after your lab exam. And when you sit down for your lab exam and go through the details and trying to figure out how to pass it. And some guys are very fortunate, they pass on their first attempt. I know plenty of people that have cracked the lab on the first attempt. I'm very envious of those people. I am not one. I know a lot of people that have passed on the second attempt. If I would have caught my issue in the second attempt that I found in the third attempt, I would have passed on the second attempt too. I would have had a much lower number. I probably would have been in the 40,000 range if I had to guess. Probably 48,000, 49,000 would be probably my CCA number. But it doesn't really matter. A pass is a pass. So, toughest section, first attempt was all three. Trying to understand them. And then it's just a matter of picking them apart. How did you practice SDA? So I never had to. SDA wasn't a thing back then. So neither was SD-WAN. So this was before SD-WAN really became a thing. DMVPN was very popular. It still is. I'm actually running... I run into a lot of customers running DMVPN today. And... so I'm very knowledgeable in how that particular capability works. So I'm able to speak very intelligently on how to, why you would want to move away from DMVPN to migrate to SD-WAN. So now, in a perfect world, assuming that Cisco is going to, I saw a tweet, and I won't call the person out by name, but I saw a tweet that the expected release notes for CML 2.7 or 2.7 are supposed to the Catalyst 9K is supposed to go from a beta release to a full baked release like Nexus 9K is, and it'll support a full deployment of SDA. That's what I've heard. Now, I don't know if that's reality. I will have to wait until 2.7 is released, because if that's the case, then I would probably then start to give it more consideration. I would go get the newest version of CML, extrapolate all the necessary pieces I need in order to run SDA, and then I don't know how I would find it, but I would need to find a semi-new, or at least the version of SDA or DNA Center that is going to be running the lab exam. I would have to leverage my Google Foo skills in order to find it. I'm sure it's out there. I have no doubt. Cisco might even allow you to download it, but I don't know. I don't know what the capabilities are. I haven't tried DNA Center in a long time. I do have a server that is capable of running it. This guy right here, he's capable of running an SDA, a DNA Center environment, which is one of the reasons why I bought the server, because it had the horsepower to do that. Now I was looking ahead in time. What are my capabilities? What are my options? Things like that. As soon as it wants to load. So this thing's got plenty of horsepower. I've got 380 gigs of RAM. I've got 92 gigahertz of compute. So I've heard it's supposed to be, what do they say, 32 cores and 256 gigs of RAM, something like that. I have enough to run a single instance of DNA Center. So that's one of the things that if I was going to go do it, I would deploy DNA on this box, and then I would go deploy EVE-NG, like I would leverage one of my bare metal EVE-NG servers, and I would connect the two together, and I would start building out an SDA fabric, just to learn it. Because again, I'm one of those type of people that would like to learn, and I would have to go through the full workup, what that looks like, deploying DNA, deploying Cat 9Ks, what are all the functional capabilities like CSR 1000V, Cat 8K, Cat 9K, what can I integrate, what are the different roles and responsibilities, what's supported, what's not, all that type of stuff. And I would learn both the manual way and the auto deploy way through DNA Center, because I want to make sure that I'm covering both ways and how to deploy stuff, integrating it with ICE, and then some wireless and things like that, how you would integrate that. I would take the time to figure out how to do those things. So how would I actually lab it up, all the pieces? I don't know what's actually covered in enterprise infrastructure. I'd have to go look. So let me just take a real quick detour to CCIE Enterprise. So let me take a look at both of these, and I want to look at the lab exam. So if I look at the lab exam and I look at the software-defined infrastructure, SD access, LAN automation, plug and play, device discovery, extended and policy, extended nodes, list, BGP control plane, VXLAN, TrustSec, fabric in a box. Okay, so because I don't see layer 2 handoff, border handoff, SGTs, Skaggles. Okay, so I don't see anything in here that indicates anything with wireless, because that's what I'm seeing. SD-WAN is involved. This would probably require me to go and do an update to the SD-WAN stuff that I did cover a few years ago, but no big deal. Now on the other side here we have enterprise wireless. Let's see. Enterprise wired and wireless networking. So wired, you have your basics, right? SD access, wireless deployment via VXLAN, lists, VRFs, and then your wireless networking. So at some point in here, you would have to connect your access points to the edge nodes, because I think border connects to the outside world, and then edge is what you would connect. I really wish they would have used the same terminology they do in VXLAN, spine and leaf, where you'd have your control plane node as your. But I know I realize they can't do that, but anyway, that's my point. So you take that into consideration. What they want you to know for SD access, the underlay and the overlay, it would be, to me, it's feasible. I would have to run both a SD-WAN and an SDA fabric at the same time, but I really can't really dive into either one of those because I haven't seen if Cat 9Ks are fully supported, and they're expensive to go buy hardware. So is it doable? Probably, but I would have to really learn SDA, and I just haven't taken the time for it. None of the customers I'm working with have it. As far as I know, the only SDA DNA Center, the only DNA Center deployments I've ever heard of are assurance deployments. So I don't personally know of any organization running full SDA. Not to say that they're not out there, I just don't know of them. So last question is, may you please advise if someone is studying for the CCIE, let's say someone is good with route switch, SDA, SD-WAN, and design section, but is completely lost and a complete beginner with Python network automation using programming language. What would your advice be for automation network programmability section? What advice roadmap material would you suggest? Would you suggest studying in auto or DevNet Associate or network programmability and Python book or what? Because I heard the programmability I heard the programmability section is pretty complex in the exam, and V11 heard they had a part where you have to edit a RESTconf Python script to work. I also heard that CBT Nuggets course in auto is good, but not enough at all. I really don't even know. I am not a automation person at all. To be 100% honest, and I was going to get to this earlier, but my opinion on that is it is a complete waste of a network engineer's time and effort to do anything automation for a core competency exam. To me, it is Cisco shoving a capability and an optimization down your throat. So I think it's a complete waste of time. To me, the moment Cisco decided to go down the track of having their own dedicated DevNet certification track, DevNet Associate, Professional, and then DevNet Expert, they should have detached that requirement from all the other exams. I think it's a complete waste of time. I wouldn't even know where to start because I'm not an automation person. I have no desire to automate things. To me, that's programmability. I am not a programmer. I did not go to college to become a computer science major. I do not code. That's not what I do. I'm a network engineer. Like you want to talk about VLANs, trunking, spanning tree, port channels, multi-chassis link aggregation. You want to talk about routing protocols and IPsec VPNs and WAN connectivity and MPLS VPNs and all that type of stuff. I'll talk about that for days, and I can. But to me, programmability is a complete waste of time unless you have a very large environment that you're supporting where you need to do that. In my experience as an engineer, in the 15 years that I've been an engineer, I have only ran across a handful of times where I've had a project large enough in scope where I'm touching enough hardware to where an automation script might be relevant. And all you're doing, and literally the one big one that I did before I passed the CCIE, it was the last project second to last project I took on, where I was responsible for enabling QoS in a 7,000 or 8,000 switch network for a global organization that I did some work for a few months, and we used SolarWinds Configuration Manager, I believe it was, and literally it was just me logging in using Notepad, and to build a script, I would upload it to Config Manager, and then I would select the devices I wanted to send it to. I would push the config out to these devices, and then I had another Notepad doc that would be it took some time to get the feedback I was looking for, but then I would take that Notepad doc with the pipe commands, show run this, show pipe this, and it would send these commands out to all these devices. But literally all it was doing was me pushing from a single device, and it was so all this device was doing was SSHing out to a bunch of devices, pushing this config script to this device, and then it would run for 10, 15 minutes maybe, and then I would get an output of what was successful and what the outputs were, and then I had another job that I would run, if you will, that was pushing the config for it wasn't a config, it was a bunch of show commands just to verify what was going on, but I'm always a configure and verify type of logic. Trust but verify, I guess. So that's literally, I'm trying to think back. There was one other time where we used automation, but it was, I had secure CRT, here, I'll show you, I'll pull this one over here. This is for a lab that I'm working on, but literally I would have, in the session manager, I would have all these devices squared away per data center. So literally all I would do is I would have them organized in folders, and I would just expand it. I'd be like, okay, here, right click here, and I'd say I'd connect in tabs, right? So all of a sudden I'd have 25 devices that would automatically let me log in because I had the username and password set correctly. They would automatically log in, and then I would go over here to view command window, click in the command window, and send commands to all sessions. So if I hit the enter key here, literally all of my tabs are going to light up, which means I just sent an enter key to all the devices. Now XR, it's going to prompt me for the password, but for R1, it got me to the router command. I haven't configured R1 yet because of where I'm at in this lab, but that's all I would do. To me, that like automation is for very large scale deployments, and where you're touching hundreds of devices and making the same change over and over and over again to multiple devices. That's where automation comes into play. If you're making, and I've never, very rarely do I ever have to make that many config changes. I've done more with things like Postman. I would use Postman to log into NSX Manager to push VLAN backed and overlay segments to NSX Manager if I was doing like a migration from, or we were standing something up new, or we had a lot of new implementation or whatever it was. I would use Postman to do stuff like that. I know you can take it a step further, multiple steps further, where you can use it to push a whole bunch of different things and set a bunch of config variations and variants. But I just needed a lot of the stuff that would be a lot of individual clicky stuff that would be time consuming. I was able to script that. And I was actually shown how to do that by people I worked with that were way smarter than me when it came to it. And they would automate what they needed to do in order to get the job done, because they didn't have time to spend 20 minutes, configuring 20 VLAN back segments. They would just put it into a spreadsheet, upload it to Postman, and then boom, it would just be deployed. So there are ways of doing it to make it faster, but in the 15 years that I've been doing it, I can only think of a handful of times, probably less than 10, where I have needed to configure, well, probably even less than that, probably 5, 6 maybe, and only 3 of them are really coming to brain that were like standout. But other than that, I never had a use case for automation, because all of my config changes were specific to a handful of devices. So would I have the configurations that I was going to apply ready to go already? Yes. I've already done my due diligence. I would have already tested it out. That's why I always had the lab that I've had built. That's why I had as many servers as I had, so that I could have stuff pre-built, and it wasn't me trying to, okay, what is that syntax again? I would literally test it out beforehand, and that's how I built a lot of my documentation. I would build something out in a lab ahead of time, take all the outputs from that, put it into documentation for my customers' change management, pass it to them. They would use it for config management. They would see it before and after, so they knew it was going to work. And then we would get the approved change window. We'd go in, make the change, everything would work swimmingly, and we'd back out. Not back out the change, but we would be done. We'd save the config and we move on with our day. But I was very thorough in making sure that whatever I was going to configure was going to work. So to me, that wasn't something you would automate. Very few customers, I'm seriously trying to think here, very few customers I ever worked with had large enough environments to where we would need to do that. So to me, automation in the CCIE, any automation at the CCIE level, waste of time. I don't see any point in it at all, and I will die on that hill until the day I retire. So it's like, why are you putting things into play that only, in my opinion, the amount of the talent pool that actually needs to use that, they're out there, but I'm not one of them. So to me, it's a waste of time. Like, to be completely honest with you, whenever I was studying for a written exam where that was a topic that I needed to go through, I would just casually read through some documentation on automation, or I would look through, like on the blueprint here for automation. So literally, this is what I would do. I would read up What does this look like? What is XML? What is YAML? Yet another markup language. Jinja, emapplets, guest shell. I knew what this stuff was. vManage API, HTTP request, get, put, post. So I would know at a high level what they were, and I could identify them, but would I work with them? No clue. Not at all. I would do a very, very basic level of discovery, just enough to where I'd be able to answer some basic questions, and most of the time I got about half the time I would get wrong. Because I just didn't give a crap. I really don't. I think automation is a complete waste of time unless you work in an environment where where it's big enough to where you're doing that. And in my opinion, that's not where CCIEs belong. CCIEs are specific to specific change windows where there's complex networking. That to me is where a CCIE belongs, not or at a high level, or like at an architect level that can interpret what's going on in multiple parts of the network and can see the network end to end. But now I know folks that are hardcore. I mean, one name that pops out of my head, Nick Russo. He is an automation wizard, but he's also got a programmability background and he enjoys it. More power to the guy. Like, I have zero interest in doing anything automation or programmability. To me, if I was on the CCIE advisory board, I would be the one guy who would be like, pull it off. You already have DevNet. Why do you need to inject automation and programmability into an exam that doesn't need it? Like, you have DevNet. That's where you need to put your time and effort. If that's what you want to go do, that's who you have that there for. Now, I know the argument would be, well, on this large scale this, or I'm sure there's going to be arguments back and forth. It's like, okay, that's fine. But to me, making somebody know how to do something for the sake of just knowing how to do it is futile. I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. So, because I know you brought up NSO for service provider. So let's actually just take a look at what I need to know for service provider, considering that's something I will have to actually put some time and effort into. Assurance and automation, right? 20% of the exam. So assurance, segment routing monitoring, TWAMP, Y1731, all this stuff I'm familiar with. NSO packages, XR devices, Yang, gRPC, GNMI, GPB. I don't know what any of that means. I know RPC is from remote procedure call, but what G means, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Deploy and optimize Ansible playbook and Python scripts that interact with NSO, XE, and XR devices. I guess I'll have to go learn a little bit of that. XR application hosting using native and cloud-based applications. Okay. Secure zero-touch provisioning. I'm assuming that's what ZTP stands for. So, will I have to learn a little bit here? Yeah, but I'm going to learn the very basics to it. Like, I'm not going to be an expert on NSO. I will have to go read the documentation. What do I need to learn for that? So, will I lab it up and test it? Sure, I will. Will it piss me off, and will I be using a lot of four-letter words that I normally don't like to say? Probably, because it's one thing that I just don't have any interest in learning. I think it's a waste of time for a network engineer to be a programmer. They're trying to inject something into it that I just don't see any value in. So, and I'll die on that hill. I'm sure there's people who are like, we need more automation. And I'll be like, yeah, take a long jump off a short cliff. I just don't care. So, but, then again, because of the fact that the customers I've worked on, there's never been the need for it. So why am I going to put my time and effort into something that customers don't need me to know? So anyway, that's my opinion on that. I know it's probably a little bit more. I'm very defiant in my opinion, and I've told hiring managers, they were like, well, what are you ever going to learn, like, automation? Nope. Like, if you expect me to automate things, find somebody else. As a matter of fact, before I left my last job and came to the one that I'm at today, I was asked about that, if I was into automation. I'm like, it sounds cool, but I'm not a programmer. I'm an engineer. Like, my job is to engineer networks, not automate them. So Would it make it easier? Maybe. Could it also break stuff? Absolutely. So it's, I had other conversations with people where they were like, how come you're so against it? It's like, I'm not a programmer. I have no desire to be one. So I want to be a really good engineer. So to me, engineers aren't programmers. So they're two different things. You have software programmer and you have network engineer. So you don't have network programmer or software. You have software engineer, but you don't have network programmer. To me, that's not the thing. You're engineering networks. You're configuring stuff. But so with that being said, that is why I feel the way that I do. So if you take it or leave it, it's you asked. That's my answer. I did the same thing as you in switch 5 and 6. However, switch 5 does not learn the MAC address after the ping between the PCs. What is the error here? Both gig 00 between the switches are trunking and the VLANs are created on switch 5 as well. Only VLAN 1 showing in the MAC address on the adjacent switch. Switch 5 and switch 6. Of course it would. Oh, good grief. I don't know why I'm getting a Lululemon commercial. That's kind of funny. Switch 5 and switch 6. Alright, let me blow this up here. Switch 5. Okay. So the original question was switch 5, the same thing as switch 5 and switch 6. However, switch 5 does not learn the MAC address after the ping between the PCs. What is the error here? Both gig 00 between the PCs, switches are trunking, and the VLANs are created on switch 5 as well. Only VLAN 1 showing up with the MAC address on the adjacent switch. That is a good question, because as soon as you create the trunk, and the VLANs exist on both switches, then if this guy pings between these two, the MAC address will get learned here and automatically propagated up here. So I don't know. I don't know why it's not working. That's kind of unusual. It should be. So that's a good question. I would have to dig into it to see what exactly the problem is. So yeah. I'd have to look at your config to see exactly what the problem is, or see what you're doing. So with that being said, that is it for today's YouTube Ask Me Anything series. I feel like I need to start one of those.